Let's get more reaction to one of the biggest stories of the day, the sacking, if you remember it, early this morning, 8:30 a.m. I think it was, of Suella Braverman as Home Secretary. I can't think of anyone better to talk to than a former Tory leader himself, Sir Iain Duncan Smith, Tory MP for Chingford and Woodford Green. Sir Iain, where were you when you heard that Suella lost her job?
I think I was in the car. That's all I heard, was somebody texted me and said, Suella's gone. I mean, these things, when you're doing reshuffles like that, they happen suddenly. So the sackings all come out first, as you know. And I was a bit surprised that it was done by telephone.
Yep.
Normally you would hope that they might be seen and thanked, but it was by telephone. And then the whole thing got underway. But no, I was sorry. I'm sorry. I'll be honest with you, I'm sorry to see Suella go.
Yeah.
I think she's a highly intelligent, a very good lawyer, and she understood the real threat that we face with being unable to get these boats stopped, and she's been very much at the prime of doing all of that. So I think it'll be a loss.
There's been no exchange of letters between the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary. Normally there is a degree of politeness and well done doing this.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. I'm surprised at that. That's not normally how things should go.
That's unusual, and it illustrates the coldness between the two people. Who is the standard bearer of the right now in your party? Now, I asked that question of the government at the lobby meeting. They put up Lee Rowley, who's the Housing Minister. But you have lost a senior voice there in one of the great offices of state. And how does that make you feel as a...
The Conservative Party is a right-of-centre party. So when you say who's the standard bearer...
You know what I mean, Iain Duncan Smith.
Well, no, but my point is it should be... you should automatically go, well, that's the Prime Minister, because we're a right-of-centre party, we should believe in all these things and we want to drive them. So you wouldn't have asked that question when Margaret Thatcher was around. You know exactly who was the standard bearer. So I'm not very good at reading the runes or looking around. I think a lot of people would claim to have that position. But my general view right now is we have a short period of time in which to get the sort of policy to bring that coalition that voted for us in 2019 hugely, got us across the line. It's a mix of people who wanted to deliver Brexit quite categorically. They wanted a control of migration, which they wanted. They wanted the government off their backs. They wanted lower taxes, absolutely clear, because they, many of them are on low incomes, etc. And they don't want all this woke nonsense that's been going on, which is destroying their lives, including, by the way, beating them up to get to net zero, a target which is plucked out of nowhere.
Which has been watered down by the PM, Mr Sunak, hasn't it, to 2035 on some targets to avoid doing that.
It's a start, but we need to go a lot further.
What's your advice to Suella Braverman? If I was Suella right now, what would you be saying to me? You'd say, Suella, don't do a speech from the backbenches, which she has a right to do a resignation speech from the backbenches.
I think she now needs to conduct herself on the basis that she has principles and she understands where she believes the party to go. I think it's quite legitimate if she's on the backbenches. She's freer to express her view about where she thinks we ought to go, how that should work, and what, therefore, a Conservative Party over the next year should look like. She's quite at liberty to do that. I would have no problem with her doing that. When I ceased being leader, I set up the Centre for Social Justice. I campaigned to try and deliver Conservative values down to those who...
Well, you famously went to government in Scotland. You saw poverty. You came back. You founded a think tank to alleviate poverty. You then did universal credit. You had a kind of, I would say, a better time out of government, or out of being leader than being leader.
No, I mean, I delivered all that and I came back into government as a result of that work. So, there is always... It's not over. Don't think for one moment that it's over just because you're on the back benches. On the back benches is really where all politics is. When you're in government, you're trapped in collective responsibility, and that makes it very difficult.
Well, Bill Cash, who, of course, the man who really delivered Brexit in terms of legally through the House of Commons, will tell you that people only on the back benches get things done. In government, you can't do the big things. But just to ask you quickly, what was Suella up to last week? Did you ever find out? Have you asked her? You're a fan.
I haven't, actually, to be honest.
She was really goading the Prime Minister to sack her, and he did.
Well, interestingly, the truth is they didn't. Here's the interesting thing. They didn't disagree about the issue of the marches. They seem to have completely agreed that the marches should not have taken place. So I think they were disagreeing, it turns out, about the tenor of what she said. But the reality is that they both came out and said the marches shouldn't take place. So in a way, they were in disagreement with the police, both of them. So it's the way it's done, I suspect, that he's acted for. Whether you like that or not, the reality is a vast majority of the public actually agreed that this was remembrance. I mean, I served in the army. I was in Northern Ireland. I lost a particularly good friend, in a disgraceful way that he was killed. all of this. So I wanted to commemorate that in peace. I did not need to have some protest march taking place. Could have taken place on the Monday. So I don't know why we had to allow it on
Well, we're
the
looking at the government may well be tightening up the laws on when you can protest.
They damn well should do.
They may ban on certain days. You may be a certain threshold, which is easier for police to hit.
Absolutely.
Are you offended at the fact that you aren't good enough to be Foreign Secretary? In fact, you and nor any of your colleagues in the House of Commons. He's had to go and find a Foreign Secretary who isn't even in the House of Lords to do the job. Is that not annoying for you?
Well, I have one or two concerns. Let me say that I am sanctioned. I'm one of 7 people in Parliament that is sanctioned by the Chinese government. We discovered through IPAC, the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, there was a genocide taking place in Xinjiang. People are literally being into forced labour, slave labour.
OK, that's why you couldn't be Foreign Secretary.
Well, it's more than that. It's the fact that I, therefore, being sanctioned, hounded by wolf warriors, etc., as are my colleagues, our sites are attacked, and then David Cameron is coming in, and I'm a little bit puzzled about this, because until recently it appears that he's being paid by the Chinese government to promote certain things to do with the government. I want to know, I'll be honest with you, why that's a conflict, and I want to know how that is to be settled, because we are under threat the whole time, and we are members of the Parliament. A couple of people are in government, for God's sake. So this is a real question mark for me about what is that conflict and how is that to be settled.
And indeed, David Cameron was quite pro-China, because I went on the plane with him back in 2011 to Shanghai.
That was a
right.
disaster.